You never really notice the end of something when it's happening. Only after. Only when it's too late. I used to live on Ashford Lane. Quiet little cul-de-sac just off Millers Road. Middle of nowhere, but a good kind of nowhere, kids on bikes, lawns trimmed every Sunday, mailboxes painted white. The kind of place where you know your neighbors, wave at them every morning, borrow a cup of sugar without hesitation. Yeah? The streets empty. Boards on windows. Lawns overgrown. Houses abandoned, for sale, or just left to rot. Some people say it was the economy. Others say it was crime. But I know the truth. It was him. Number 17. The house with the ivy-covered fence and the broken porch light. The house that used to belong to the Caldwells before they moved out overnight. No for sale sign. No moving van. Just gone. And that's when he moved in. His name was Mr. Lawton. Middle-aged. Always wore a hat, even inside. Pale like he didn't see much sun. The kind of guy who didn't make eye contact, didn't smile. At first, we thought he was just shy. New guy in town, maybe had a rough past. We gave him the benefit of the doubt. Shouldn't have. I remember the first time I really saw him. It was a Saturday morning, early spring. I was taking out the trash, still half asleep, and I noticed Lawton standing at the edge of his driveway. Just standing. No movement. Staring across the street at the Harrisons' house. He stood there for 10 minutes, motionless. When he finally turned to go back inside, I swear he looked right at me and smiled. Not a friendly smile. Something about it made my skin crawl. After that, things started changing. First, it was the smells. A thick, sour stench drifting from his house every few nights. Like rotting meat, but sharper. People joked it was bad cooking. But no one laughed for long. Then came the noises. Strange mechanical sounds at night. Grinding, sawing, scraping. Always between 2 and 4 a.m. Loud enough to hear from across the street, but whenever someone knocked to complain, he never answered the door. Or worse, he did and just stared, dead-eyed, until they left. The Harrises were the first to say something publicly. Susan Harris posted on the neighborhood Facebook group asking if anyone else had seen Lawton digging in his backyard at night. Not a little gardening. Big holes. Pits. Her post disappeared within the hour. She claimed she deleted it. But a week later, they were gone. Moved out with barely a word. That's when the fear started. Not just unease fear. People stopped going outside after dark. Neighborhood kids stopped playing on the street. If Lawton walked by, conversations died. You could feel it, the sense that something was off, something wrong was bleeding into our perfect little street. I tried to ignore it. Until the night I heard something under my window. It was around 3 a.m. I was half asleep, heard a scrape against the siding of my house. I thought it was a tree branch. But then I heard footsteps. Slow. Deliberate. Moving beneath the window, then stopping. I got up, pulled the curtain aside, and saw him. Lawton. Standing in my yard. In the dark. Staring up at the window. In his hands something long. Sharp. Could have been a garden tool, could have been a blade. I ducked back, heart racing. When I looked again, he was gone. I told myself I imagined it. That it was stress. That it was just a weird neighbor being weird. But the next morning I found footprints in the dirt beneath the window. Heavy boots. Deep impressions. And something else. A scrap of cloth torn on the edge of a shrub. Black. Smelled like chemical cleaner. And something metallic. That's when I realized Lawton wasn't just strange. He was watching us. And worse, he was testing boundaries. Seeing how far he could go. We hadn't seen anything yet. After that night, the one where I saw Lawton outside my window, I stopped sleeping properly. Every sound made me jump. Every creak of the house felt like footsteps. My wife said I was being paranoid. Then it started for real. 3 nights after I saw him, the Bradley's dog went missing. Big German Shepherd, always barking at everything. One night he was there, next morning gone. They searched for days, posted flyers. Nothing. Then they found it. Not the dog, its collar. Hanging on their porch. The metal tag had been scratched. Words carved into it. Quiet now. Mrs. Bradley was never the same after that. And Lawton? Still walking the street every night. Same hat. Same slow pace. Just watching. Smiling. People started locking their doors earlier. Then came the deadbirds. Always in 3s, placed neatly on doorsteps. No blood. No wounds. Just dead. Like they were, posed. My wife called the police. They came, did a wellness check at Lawton's house. He let them in. Smiled the whole time. And when they came out, they said there was nothing wrong. You folks need to relax, one of the officers told me. You're letting rumors get to you. Rumors. That night, I found deep scratches on my front door. Not animal marks. Long vertical. Measured. Carved by hand. I didn't sleep at all. Then the one family vanished. No goodbye. No moving truck. Just gone. Inside their mailbox? A single glove. Child-sized. Stiff with something dark. The police wouldn't investigate. They said it was a private matter. Lawton's house, once just a creeping nightmare on the block, became the center of rot. People said they saw lights at 3 a.m. flickering, strobing, like from a strobe or an old projector. Shadows moving behind the curtains. Whispers in the dark. I wanted to move. My wife begged me to. But I said no. This was our home. Our street. Until that final week, when everything collapsed. It began with the screaming. Not ours. The Gellers, 2 houses down. At 1:17 a.m. sharp, the sound of glass breaking and a woman's voice screeching, raw terror. Then a man yelling. Then a thump. Then silence. I called 911. No answer. Dead line. I grabbed a flashlight, ran outside barefoot, breath freezing in the cold air. Other neighbors were out too, half-dressed, panicked. Lights flicking on in houses. And then we saw it. The Gellers' house, door wide open. On the porch, a trail of blood. Not a smear. A line. Deliberate. Leading into the yard toward Lawton's fence. Something was nailed to it. We got closer. Someone had already vomited in the grass. A couple of people just turned and ran. It was Mr. Geller's hand. Nailed by the fingers. Skin pale, nails torn, blood dried. Pinned like a trophy. The Gellers were never found. Police came hours later. And they didn't go into Lawton's house. Didn't touch him. Just looked at us with dead eyes, told us they'd investigate. They never came back. People started packing that day. One by one. Overnight departures. Silence. No goodbyes. Houses emptied. Fear took everything. But we stayed. Me. My wife. A handful of others. Fools. Because Lawton wasn't finished. That night, someone set fire to the Bradleys' shed. Firefighters came. Found no one inside the shed. But in the ashes? A charred mask. Leather. Melted. With a symbol carved into it. A smiling face. Childlike. Burned deep. That's when it hit me. Lawton wasn't just acting out. He was building something. Testing us. And every family that left wasn't escaping. They were being picked off. I told my wife. We packed everything. But I was too late. We packed in silence. No words. Just the sound of drawers slamming, boxes being filled, and the constant pounding of blood in my ears. My wife moved like a ghost, pale and mechanical. She didn't ask questions anymore. Didn't tell me I was paranoid. Because by then, we knew. Lawton wasn't just watching us. He was hunting. The plan was simple. Load up the car. Leave before dawn. No goodbyes. Just drive. Get as far away from Ashford Lane as possible and never look back. It was 1:42 a.m. when the power went out. The house sank into darkness, heavy and total. My wife froze, clutching a box of photo albums. I heard her whisper, "No, not now." I grabbed a flashlight, my hands trembling so bad I nearly dropped it. Flicked it on. The beam caught the living room window. And I saw him. Standing just outside. Motionless. Hat pulled low. Face shadowed. Watching. I backed away, whispering, "Don't move. Don't open the door." My wife dropped the box. Photo albums spilled across the floor, pages fluttering like wings. She stared at me, eyes wide, mouth trembling. Then, a bang. From the back door. Hard. Deliberate. We ran for it, flashlight shaking wildly in my grip. I peeked around the corner and saw the door ajar. Just an inch. Wind moving it slightly. Except there was no wind. I stepped closer. A sound beneath the creaking door. Breathing. Heavy. Wet. I slammed it shut, locked it, bolted it. Backed away. Then I noticed the note. Slipped under the door. One word, written in dark ink that smelled of rust. Soon. I turned, yelling, "Get the keys, we're leaving now." But my wife wasn't in the room. She was at the stairs, staring up, frozen. "What are you?" Then I heard it too. Footsteps. Above us. Slow. Pacing. The attic. She whispered, "He's in the house." I didn't think. I ran for the kitchen, grabbed the biggest knife I could find. We met back at the stairs, flashlight beam trembling as it lit the narrow steps leading up to the second floor. Silence. Then a thud. Something falling. Or being dropped. From the attic hatch. My wife shook her head, crying now. We can't go up there." I nodded. We didn't need to. We had to get out. I grabbed the car keys off the hook, yanked her toward the door. She screamed. Front door, wide open. We didn't open it. And on the porch, in the flashlight beam, our car keys. The ones I just grabbed. I looked at my hand. Empty. I never took the keys. I never touched them. I turned around and saw the knife stuck in the kitchen wall exactly where I'd left it. I didn't pick it up. My hands were empty. He was inside. He'd been inside. The door behind us slammed shut. Locked. The house went still. Tom seemed to stop. And then, from upstairs, laughter. Soft. Low. Not manic. Not insane. Just patient. As if he was enjoying this. We ran. Basement. Back door. Windows. All locked. All chained. And then we saw it. Written on the bathroom mirror in something thick and brown. Ashford is mine. My wife collapsed to her knees. I pulled her up. We had one chance left. The garage. I kicked the door open, praying it wasn't locked too. It wasn't. Inside dark. Quiet. The door to the outside barred with a plank nailed from the outside in. We turned to the car. And froze. The hood was open. Inside, on the engine block, our wedding photo. Burned around the edges. The picture of us in better days. I grabbed her hand. No more waiting. We needed to break a window, climb out, run. Whatever it took. But when we turned, he was there. Lawton. In the garage. Door wide open behind him. Hat on. Face visible. Not a scar. Not a monster. Just a man. Smiling. He raised a hammer. I don't remember the hammer hitting me. I remember the moment before, his face expressionless as if it was routine. Something he'd done before. Something he'd do again. Then darkness. When I came to, I was on the front lawn, cold seeping into my skin, blood crusted in my hair. The sun was rising pink and pale, like the sky didn't know the street was dead. I staggered to my feet. Our house was gone. Not burned. Not demolished. Just empty. No furniture. No wife. No sign of struggle. Like we'd never lived there at all. Like we'd been erased. I screamed her name until my throat tore. Kicked in the door. Searched every room. No photos. No clothes. No trace of her. Just that smell, bleach, metal, and something rotten beneath it all. And on the kitchen table, one item. Her wedding ring. Inside it, a note. For words. You're still my neighbor. I ran house to house. Knocked. Kicked. Screamed. But no one opened the door. Because no one was left. Ashford Lane was silent. The Miller house? Empty. The Bradleys? Gone. The Geller place? Door wide open, furniture overturned, a handprint in blood on the wall. Every home abandoned overnight. Except his. Number 17. Porch light flickering. Curtains moving. He was watching. And I was alone. I went to the police. Bleeding. Barefoot. Ranting. They listened. And they smiled. Smiled. An officer I didn't recognize leaned in close. Sir, he said, voice calm. There is no Ashford Lane. I blinked. What? There's Miller's Road, he continued. And farmland beyond that. No street. No neighbors. No crime. I shook. I live there. My wife. He cut me off. No records of you owning property there. No record of her. No record of anyone. He slid a piece of paper toward me. A flyer. Property for sale. Ashford Estates. New development coming soon. I looked at it. Ashford Lane didn't exist. Not anymore. I went back. Drove there, hours, desperate, panicked. I turned off Miller's Road. But the street sign gone. Just a dirt path. No houses. No fences. No number 17. The land was cleared. As if the street had been ripped from the earth. In the distance I saw him. Standing alone on the dirt path. Same hat. Same smile. Waving. I didn't stop. I left and never went back. That was 3 years ago. Now I live in a small apartment. I've tried to move on. But I get letters. No return address. Always one word. Soon. I see him sometimes across the street at the edge of crowds in parking lots. And at night, I hear footsteps outside my door. Slow. Deliberate. Scrape, scrape, scrape. And I know. Ashford Lane didn't disappear. It just moved. It's strange how quiet madness is when it finally settles in. There's no screaming, no snapping point, no violent break. It just seeps into you, like water through cracks. One day you're you. The next, something else is staring back in the mirror. Something that smiles like him. After that last night on Ashford Lane, I don't know how long I was unconscious. I woke up on my front lawn. The early morning sky washing everything in dull gray. Cold dirt beneath me. Blood crusted to my scalp. Our house was still standing. But when I stumbled inside, Everything was wrong. The furniture was gone. Her clothes, her scent, her laugh, all of it wiped clean. No signs of a struggle, no signs of life. It was like we had never lived there, except for one thing. On the kitchen table, placed with care, was her wedding ring. The one I gave her 10 years ago, engraved with her name inside. I picked it up, fingers trembling, and underneath it was a piece of paper. For words, "You're still my neighbor." I screamed until my voice cracked, but there was no one left to hear it. Ashford Lane was dead. The houses, abandoned, windows broken, doors swinging on rusted hinges. Lawton's house, number 17, the ivy was gone. The porch light flickered erratically, like it was shorting out. I walked to it, barefoot, driven by something between rage and despair. The front door creaked open before I touched it. Darkness inside. I stepped in. No furniture, no pictures, just shadows and dust. But the floor, scraped and gouged, like something heavy had been dragged. And on the wall, written in what I pray was old paint, "Ashford is mine." The sound of footsteps echoed behind me. I turned. Nothing, but I could feel him. He was in the walls, the floors, the air. This wasn't a house anymore. It was him. I ran. Out the door. Into the car. Drove for hours until I couldn't remember my name. Just her name. Over and over. I left that town. Burned everything from that life. Moved to a city where no one knew me. But he found me anyway. The letters started 3 weeks later. Plain white envelopes. No return address. Always one word inside. Soon. Then came the packages. The first one held our old doormat, faded with dirt. Under it, a note. "Welcome home." I moved apartments, changed numbers, but the smells followed. Bleach, metal, rot. I started seeing him in reflections, store windows, mirrors, TV screens. He would wave, just once. I lost time, started waking up in places I didn't remember going. One morning, I found a shovel beside my bed. Handle worn smooth, blade stained. I dropped it and it clanged, echoing in my skull. The next night, I woke at 3 a.m., standing outside my neighbor's apartment, staring at their door, barefoot, holding the shovel. I didn't remember how I got there, or why I was smiling. The letters kept coming. So did the scratches on the inside of my door. 3 vertical marks like someone had been carving from the inside out. I nailed the windows shut, boarded the door, but the walls started breathing. Every night I heard chanting, soft, rhythmic, not words, just sound, like the hum of an old machine. And the mirrors, they stopped reflecting me. I saw him instead. One morning, I went outside to check my mailbox. It wasn't mine anymore. The name on it, Lawton. I called the landlord. He insisted there was no tenant by that name. Insisted no one had lived in my unit for years. When I gave him my name, he looked confused. Said there was no record of me living there either. I looked in the mirror that night. My face was changing. Eyes colder, smile thinner. His face. The final package arrived 2 nights ago. A hat. His hat. Inside, a key. Attached to a tag. One word written on it. Neighbor. The address on the tag? 17 Ashford Lane. I looked outside, where the city should be, but there it was. Ashford Lane. Rebuilt. Pristine. Like nothing had ever happened. Calling me home. I went. I couldn't stop myself. I walked the empty street, the air thick with silence. All the houses had lights on. All the doors were open. Number 17? The door swung wide. Inside, a mirror. I looked in. I was him now. I live on Ashford Lane again. The young couple next door just moved in. They wave to me every morning. Smile. Trusting. I wave back. Smile. At night, I stand in their yard. Just watching. Scrape. 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 Soon they'll leave. And I'll find someone new. Because he gave me Ashford. And I will never leave. You can't kill him. You can only become him. Thank you for watching my video to the end. I will be very pleased if you subscribe to my channel and like this video.